Hello and welcome back, this time for a review of the brand new Roto Grip gem. This is the newest high performance solid asymmetrical ball in the HP4 line from Roto Grip. Getting right into the specs here, Microtrack Solid featured on the idle, the Defiant LRG core. Relatively unique core numbers here, the RG and the intermediate diff are both fairly low for a stronger asymmetric ball. I think the design intention here was to create a nice balance of mid-lane traction and continuation on the back part of the lane off the pattern, and I think this ball really accomplished that. Usually solid asyms with this high of a differential fall into one of two categories for me. They're either so slow and forward that I can only keep them in front of me and sort of trap them and play them up the lane when there's a good bit of volume in the middle part of the lane or in the front part of the lane. Or they're dynamic enough that I can get deep, but they still have trouble going left to right, so my angles are still fairly straight. This ball had a really unique shape to it. It was a lot more forgiving and a little bit cleaner than any of the solid asyms that we've got on the line currently, and really than any that I've thrown that I can think of, with the exception of maybe the RSTX1, which was a lower performance ball and a hybrid. This almost feels like a beefed up version of that, where it can handle a little more oil, and it obviously slows down a little bit sooner. The first couple of shots were fairly right and fairly up the lane, and they held and hit the pocket nice. As I move in here, the ball actually does store quite a bit of energy. It actually is a little bit further down the lane than I would probably prefer. This pair was fresh and it was just me today, so they were particularly slick by the time I got to the video portion. And I actually think they could have been just a touch more developed for this ball to work. Later I demo against the UFO and the Proton physics, and those both picked up a hair sooner and went a little more flush than the gem tended to. Overall, seeing a high performance solid asymmetrical ball that's this forgiving and also this continuous off of the pattern on the back part of the lane is really exciting. I don't see these as particularly usable in League very often, and I think this one, the shape that I'm seeing in the review, is really going to be something I can throw kind of near the track the first game of League, and as they develop I can chase it left and not have to change balls. A lot of times if I start with something smooth or rolly a little more in front of me, I have to get out of it as soon as they transition, because that same ball isn't going to be good left to right. In this case though, I think the gem's going to be great left to right as they transition, because it doesn't just overread the mids or the fronts and really grab. Coming up, we're getting into the comparison. The first ball I compare to is the Roto Grip UFO. It was actually a similar design intention of creating an asymmetrical bowling ball that still drove through the pins on the back part of the lane and didn't lock up and go forward quite as much. That's exactly what I see out of the gem. It's really continuous for us asymmetrical ball period, but especially an asymmetrical ball that came out of the box with so much surface. We'll see the first couple of shots are a little bit further right, kind of a zone right off of where I finished the initial video. The UFO is quite a bit stronger, so it's earlier, it's got a little more traction, and it makes the move a little bit harder. That intermediate diff on the UFO is a touch higher. The bigger cover on the UFO has made it something that I can't throw a whole bunch, especially on house shot stuff. It just really wants to slow down and pick up early, and there's typically not enough oil in the front part of the lane for me to be able to throw something with that strong of a cover on a house shot anywhere that I go. The gem is a little cleaner. It tends to float just a bit further down the lane than the UFO, and it tends to be a little more angular. On this particular condition where they weren't very developed and it was just me bowling a game and a half before I started filming, I think I would have preferred the UFO, but the UFO has very few games on it because in competition for me it's just a little too much too soon. Getting into the comparison with the Proton here, these are actually a lot closer as far as total strength. They're dead on top of each other as far as where I can play them. You will see as I move deeper with the Proton, it gets a little more forward. It's a touch earlier and a touch more forward off of the pattern. So you'll see it sort of straighten out, and as I get deeper, the Proton actually wants to sort of quit and two-pin. This is a hit that I get a lot with asym balls whenever I throw a decent shot, and if I try to adjust off of it, I tend to get in trouble. If I try to soften up and slow down and make it come around the corner, it tends to hook early. If I try to hit it more, it tends to get to the same spot and then run off. So here is where the gem really kind of separates itself from anything we've got in the line currently. It really does continue on the back part of the lane where the Proton locks up and goes a little forward. This goes back to how forgiving the gem seems to be compared to any other solid asym ball that I've thrown from the Storm family so far. With balls like the Proton Physics and the UFO, I have no shim, no room to miss in, and no room to get slow. And with the gem, it behaves more like a symmetrical ball where I get a little shim, I get a little forgiveness, but I still get a strong ball. Get your gem March 11th from your local pro shop or come see me at Millennium Bowling Supply.